Monica Brooks, this court sentences you to 25 years.
Wait! Elijah, no! Free my mom, and I'll make you walk.
That's impossible! Silence! You have 30 seconds, son.
My mom didn't steal anything. She was saving my life at the hospital.
Your Honor! Hospital records can prove he's telling the truth. This sentencing is suspended immediately.
Thank you.
Welcome to Story with Black, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
The courtroom doors slammed open just as the judge lifted his gavel to send an innocent woman to prison for 25 years. A small boy came running down the aisle before anyone could stop him. He was only 9 years old, and his shoes were untied, and his shirt was buttoned wrong, like he had dressed himself in the dark and run out the door before anyone could catch him. Every lawyer in the room turned around. The prosecutor smirked. Somewhere in the back row, someone laughed out loud. The boy did not care. He ran straight past the bailiffs reaching for his arms, straight past his own mother reaching for his shoulder, and stopped right in front of the judge's bench, chest heaving, eyes wet. He looked up at the man sitting in a wheelchair behind that tall wooden desk, and he shouted words that would change everything. "Free my mom and I'll make you walk." The room exploded into laughter. Grown men in suits wiped tears from their eyes. A woman in the front row covered her mouth to hide her giggle. Somewhere near the back, a reporter whispered to another, already imagining the headline. But Judge Nathaniel Carter did not laugh. He sat completely still, staring at the boy like he had just seen a ghost climb up out of the floor. No one in that courtroom understood that this child had just cracked open a secret so big, it would bring down some of the most powerful people in America, and shake the foundations of a system that was never built to protect people who looked like him. Monica Brooks used to believe that hard work always paid off. She was a forensic accountant in Atlanta, Georgia, the kind of person companies hired to find hidden money and buried lies inside spreadsheets nobody else wanted to read. She was also a widow, raising her son Elijah alone since his father died 3 years earlier from a heart condition that came without warning. Monica worked long hours for a large charity foundation that promised to help poor black neighborhoods with food, housing, and after-school programs. She believed in that mission with her whole heart. She believed in it so much that when she noticed strange transactions moving through the foundation's accounts late one night, transactions dressed up to look like ordinary donations, she reported them right away, expecting someone to thank her. Instead, 2 weeks later, investigators showed up at her office with a warrant and cold expressions on their faces. They said millions of dollars had vanished from the foundation, and every digital trail led back to her computer, her passwords, her login times, stamped and dated like a signed confession. Monica swore she never touched that money. She swore over and over that she was trying to expose a fraud, not commit one. But evidence does not care about swearing. The jury saw numbers on a screen and a woman standing very alone at a wooden table. They found her guilty in less than 4 hours, and somewhere in the building, a young boy sat in a hallway with his grandmother, kicking his feet against a plastic chair, waiting to hear if he would still have a mother to go home to. Judge Carter had earned respect long before that day. He built his career on fairness, and people admired how he never let sympathy bend the law, not even once, not even for a child crying in his courtroom. 6 years earlier, a mysterious car crash left him paralyzed from the waist down. He told everyone it was bad weather, a slippery road, bad luck, nothing more than a tragic accident on a dark stretch of highway. He said it so many times that even he almost believed it. Now he sat above the courtroom in his wheelchair, holding Monica's fate in his hands, ready to read a sentence that would take her away from her son for 25 years, longer than Elijah had even been alive. He had the paper in front of him. He cleared his throat. His fingers touched the edge of the page. And that is exactly when the doors burst open and Elijah came running in like his whole world depended on the next 10 seconds. The bailiffs reached for him, but Judge Carter raised one hand and stopped them cold. He looked down at the shaking boy standing in front of his bench, chest still rising and falling fast. Monica was crying, begging her son to stop, telling him to sit down before he got in trouble, terrified of what this moment might cost him. The prosecutor rolled his eyes and muttered that the boy was clearly desperate, clearly coached, clearly trying to save his mother with childish tears meant to manipulate the room. But Judge Carter did something no one expected. He leaned forward slightly, studying the boy's face, and said 4 quiet words that silenced the entire courtroom. "You have 30 seconds. The laughter died instantly like someone had cut the sound out of the room. Every eye turned to the boy. Elijah did not talk about magic or miracles. He did not beg and he did not cry the way people expected him to. Instead, he said something strange, something that did not sound like a child at all. My mom says every lie leaves fingerprints. The courtroom went completely silent. He took a shaky breath and kept going, his voice trembling but steady enough to be heard in every corner. He said that on the exact day the money supposedly disappeared, his mother was not at any computer typing anything at all. She was at Children's Hospital, sitting beside his bed, holding his hand while doctors took bone marrow from her own body to save his life. He said there were nurses who remembered her singing softly to him through the whole procedure. He said there were security cameras in the hallway outside room 214. He said there were hospital records with time stamped on every single page, minute by minute, proving exactly where she stood. He said his mother could not have stolen anything that day because she never once left his side, not for a phone call, not for a meal, not for anything. The whole room stopped breathing for a moment. Even the prosecutor's smirk disappeared from his face like it had never been there. Monica's lawyer jumped to his feet and demanded the trial pause immediately, his voice cracking with urgency. The prosecutor argued back, insisting the theft could have happened remotely, that someone did not need to be physically present to move money through a computer screen. But cybersecurity investigators pulled up something troubling within hours of digging through server logs. Someone had physically logged into Monica's office computer using a keycard that day, at the exact same hour Elijah swore his mother was at the hospital holding his hand. Someone had walked into her office wearing her badge. Someone had used her identity like a mask, and worn it well enough to fool an entire courtroom. Judge Carter's face went pale as the numbers appeared on the screen in front of him. He ordered the sentencing suspended immediately, right there, in front of the cameras and the shocked, murmuring crowd. Word spread fast through the city that night. By the next morning, 3 hospital staff members came forward on their own, all confirming the exact same story without ever speaking to one another. Monica never left her son's bedside that day, not once, not for a second. Then something strange happened that nobody expected. A retired security guard, a man nobody thought would ever surface again, walked slowly into the courthouse and asked to speak with investigators. He said detectives had interviewed him months earlier, right after Monica's arrest, and he had told them the exact same story the nurses were now repeating in public. But his statement was never entered into the official case file. It had simply vanished, just like the missing millions, swallowed by a system that seemed designed to make sure nobody ever found it. Someone inside the investigation had deliberately buried the one piece of evidence that could set an innocent woman free. Judge Carter released Monica under house arrest while a new investigation began from scratch. Outside the courthouse steps, cameras flashed as mother and son ran toward each other and collapsed into a hug on the cold concrete, holding on like they were terrified to ever let go again. Reporters shouted questions from every direction. Strangers in the crowd wiped their eyes without knowing why. Across the country, on television screens and phone screens alike, people began asking the same burning question. If Monica did not steal the money, then who did, and why did someone want her blamed so badly that they were willing to bury proof of her innocence? Investigators dug deeper into the Foundation's records and found something enormous hiding underneath the charity's shining reputation. Before her arrest, Monica had secretly discovered a massive money laundering scheme running quietly through the organization for years. Executives were pretending to fund poor neighborhoods while quietly stealing federal grant money for themselves, using photographs of smiling children to raise donations that never reached a single child. When Monica noticed the strange transactions and reported them, believing she was protecting the very people the charity claimed to help, she became a threat too dangerous to ignore. Killing her would raise too many uncomfortable questions from too many people. So instead they destroyed her name completely. They built a case so convincing, so airtight, that a jury would send her away for 25 years without a single doubt in their minds. It was easier and far quieter to erase her credibility than to erase her life. Late one night, alone in his study with only a single lamp lighting the room, Judge Carter sat staring at old files from his own accident, files he had never once brought himself to reopen. Something had bothered him for years, a small detail that never quite made sense no matter how many times he tried to forget it. He pulled the original crash report from a dusty folder and read it slowly, word by word. The weather that night had been clear. The road had been dry with no ice, no rain, nothing that should have caused a car to lose control. Yet his brakes had failed completely, all at once, like they were never meant to work again from that moment forward. A cold feeling spread through his chest as the truth settled over him. Someone had tampered with his car on purpose. And just before that crash, he had been quietly investigating the very same organization now tied to Monica's case, following a trail of numbers that led somewhere he was never supposed to go. The conspiracy had not started with Monica. It had started with him years earlier, and it had already tried to silence one judge before it ever tried to destroy one mother. Every single day after that, Elijah showed up at the courthouse steps before school, waiting for updates about his mom's case, refusing to give up hope even for one afternoon. He always found a way to talk to Judge Carter, sometimes just a few quiet words exchanged in the hallway between hearings. One afternoon, standing by the elevator, he said something the judge could not shake off no matter how hard he tried. People don't stand because their legs work. They stand because they choose what's right. Judge Carter stared at the boy for a long moment, searching his young face for something he could not quite name, then wheeled himself back to his office in complete silence. That night, for the first time in years, he picked up the phone and called his old physical therapist, asking for one more session, one more chance. His doctors were stunned days later when his legs responded better than anyone expected, muscles waking up after years of silence. Something inside him was slowly coming back to life, and it was not just his muscles. But the people behind the conspiracy were not going to disappear quietly, not while so much money and power still hung in the balance. Within days, strange and frightening things began happening across the city. A witness who had agreed to testify vanished without a trace, his apartment left with the lights still on. A storage room holding old case evidence caught fire overnight, destroying boxes of paperwork that could never be replaced. A hospital employee who had confirmed Monica's alibi was attacked outside her own home late one night and barely survived the assault. Then someone broke into Monica's house while she and Elijah slept upstairs, tearing through drawers and closets downstairs, clearly searching for something very specific. Fearing for their lives, Monica and Elijah were placed into protective custody, moved quietly to a secure location guarded around the clock by officers who trusted no one outside their own small circle. While hiding in that unfamiliar house, surrounded by boxes they barely recognized as their own, Elijah suddenly remembered something his mother had told him a long time ago, back when he was too young to understand why it mattered. She once hid a small flash drive inside an old family Bible and made him promise never to throw it away, no matter whatever happened to her. He had almost forgotten about it completely until that very moment, sitting on the floor surrounded by half-packed boxes. They searched frantically through everything from their old house and finally found the Bible tucked beneath a stack of faded photographs. Inside its worn, soft pages sat a tiny flash drive, wrapped carefully in a plastic bag like a secret waiting patiently to be found. When investigators plugged it into a secure computer, encrypted files slowly appeared on the screen, revealing years of hidden financial records. Names of powerful politicians. Names of judges. Names of police officials. Names of wealthy business leaders, all connected to the very same corruption, stretching back nearly a decade into the past. Just when it seemed the truth was finally within reach, close enough to touch, the lead prosecutor suddenly disappeared without any warning. Days later, his body was found, and officials quickly called it a suicide, closing the door on any further questions. But before his death, he had quietly scheduled an email to send automatically if anything ever happened to him, a final message he never wanted anyone to read while he was still alive. Inside that email were secret recordings, proving he had been threatened into prosecuting innocent people for years, forced to protect his own family from people who controlled far more than courtrooms and badges. The conspiracy was larger than anyone had imagined, and it stretched into every corner of power across the entire state. Judge Carter quietly prepared for one final public hearing, telling almost no one what he truly planned to do. Reporters filled every seat in the courtroom, believing they were simply watching the retrial of Monica Brooks one more time. Instead, Judge Carter wheeled himself to the center of the room, gripping the edge of his desk with both hands, and announced something no one in that room expected to hear. This was no longer a single case about one accused woman. This was now the largest public corruption investigation in the state's entire history. One by one, he called forward the people who had spent years hiding behind polished reputations and expensive suits. The billionaire founder of the charity, smiling nervously for the cameras. A powerful United States congressman adjusting his tie. The Atlanta police commissioner standing stiff and silent. A wealthy federal contractor with connections stretching across the entire country. Each one denied everything with practiced confidence, the same confidence that had protected them for years. Then the courtroom screens lit up all at once. Financial records appeared line by line. Secret recordings played through the speakers. Security footage rolled across every monitor. The dead prosecutor's final confession echoed through the silent room. The contents of the flash drive spread across every screen for the whole world to see. Every single lie collapsed under the weight of undeniable proof, one after another, like dominoes finally falling. As officers moved in to arrest the conspirators one after another, handcuffs clicking in the tense silence, Judge Carter gripped the sides of his wheelchair with trembling hands. The entire room fell into complete silence, waiting, watching, barely breathing. Slowly, painfully, using every bit of strength his body had left after 6 long years, he pushed himself upward. For the first time since the crash that nearly ended everything, Judge Nathaniel Carter stood on his own 2 feet inside that courtroom. Nobody laughed this time. Reporters lowered their cameras in stunned disbelief. Several people in the crowd began to cry openly, unable to hold back their tears. Monica covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face, watching something she never believed she would witness happen right in front of her. In the weeks that followed, Monica Brooks was completely and officially exonerated, her name finally cleared in every newspaper that had once called her guilty. More than 18 other innocent people, framed by the very same organization over many years, were released from prison after their cases were quietly reopened one by one. Millions of stolen dollars were traced and returned to the community programs they were always meant to help in the first place. The corrupt officials who had built their power on other people's suffering received sentences that would follow them for the rest of their lives, locked away from the world they once controlled. On the final day at the courthouse, with cameras waiting just outside the doors, Judge Carter knelt down in front of Elijah, looking him directly in the eyes at last. "You didn't heal my legs," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "You healed my courage. I had stopped believing justice could still win in this world. You reminded me why I became a judge in the first place." Elijah smiled, the same brave smile he wore the day he ran into that courtroom with his shoes untied, and answered him softly, without any hesitation at all. "I told you. When good people do the right thing, impossible things happen." The room erupted into applause, cameras flashing from every direction at once. Weeks later, Elijah stood on a stage in Washington, receiving the National Medal of Courage for exposing one of the largest corruption schemes in American history, his mother watching proudly from the front row with tears streaming freely down her face. But even as the applause faded and the television cameras packed away and drove off into the night, quiet whispers continued moving through certain private offices across the city, conversations between people who had never once been named in any courtroom, people who had funded the conspiracy from the shadows for years and were still watching closely, still waiting patiently to see exactly how much Judge Carter and that fearless little boy actually knew, and exactly how far they were both willing to go to find out the rest.